All right, here's lesson 4-5, use models to multiply a decimal and a decimal. Now, a lot of teachers hate this lesson and skip it, but I love it because it really illustrates how multiplication of decimals work. Remember, a decimal that's less than 1, you have a value less than 1. So if you're multiplying one value less than 1 by another value less than 1, you're going to wind up with something really tiny. A rectangle has an area of 0.24 square meters. What is one possibility for the length and width of the rectangle, and tell why? Solve the problem any way you choose. So as we're looking at this chart right here, this whole chart equals one hole. So it's a 10 by 10 chart, and we're looking for possible examples of a total of 24. So think about, we can jump ahead a little bit and talk about some fact families, because we know area equals length times width. So we're going to multiply two numbers together to get 24. Well, we could have a 1 by 24, but we can't show that on our chart because our chart is 10 by 10, remember? So we want to stay below that. But we could have a 2 by 12, and I am putting factor pairs up, and I'm putting them up in order. So I'm thinking in my head, 1 goes in 24 times, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, 4 times 6, 5 doesn't go in, and then 6 times 4, so we'd have a reversal right here. So what we have here are 4 factor pairs for 24. Which ones can I show on my chart? Well, I can't show these two right here because they're bigger than 10, but I can show these two. So I can show a 3 by 8. So I'm going to say a 3 by 8. 3 by 8 equals 24. And what that shows me is 3 by 8, 0.3 times 0.8 equals 0.24. Because remember, these are 24 little blocks out of a whole, out of one. Another way I can show it is a 4 by 6. So I could go 4 by 6, and I could show 24 that way. 4 by 6 that way. And let's take a look at what that actually looks like when we do it. Moving ahead a little bit, I know this is jumping ahead a little bit into the chapter. So watch how we do this. I like it. It's fun. So 3, here's 3 tenths. 1, 2, 3 out of 10. So that is going to be representing 3 tenths. And I'll do some little coloring in there so we can see the difference. And now on this side over here, on the row side, so I have like 3 columns and 8 tenths of a row. I'm going to start up in the corner there, count down 8, and I'm going to show 8 tenths. So I'm going to do that this way. So I have 3 tenths as my columns and 8 tenths as my rows. The overlap is equal to 0.3 times 0.8 equals 0.24. So you're going to see that in today's lesson. You could do this one, just mess around with the 100 grid and draw different combinations of 24, rectangles of 24, and you would find out the only two possibilities you would have is 4 times 6 or 8 times 3 that would actually fit on that grid. So is there another pair of dimensions that would work? So we said 3 times 8, but we could use 6 times 4 would work and fit on that grid. So let's take a look at how this lesson progresses. How can you model? So this is what we're doing. We're modeling multiplication of decimals. A carpenter cuts 2 square shelves with the dimensions given below. Show how to use a model to find the area of each shelf. So again, we can see we're working with numbers that are less than a whole. And on this side, we're working with a number that's greater than a whole. So we're going to need more than one grid. So let's see how we do this. For the shorter shelf, shade in the first 5 columns and the first 3 rows. And remember that, look at the colors they're doing. So we have 5 columns. So we're shading that whole thing in that ugly green color. And then we have 3/10 for the rows. So we're shading that in. And the overlap is our answer. So this is just being able to model the answer. I know you probably could just multiply and do this. Oh, that's a cool purple. 3 times 5 is 15. And remember from the previous lesson, we have to look at how many digits are in decimal place value in the factors. There's one here and one here. So that is a total of 2. So we need to have 2 digits in decimal place value in the answer. And on this guy, on part C here, because our one value is more than a whole, we can just put 2 100 grids next to each other. That works. So we put them next to each other, and then we can illustrate 5/10. So we're shading in, we're going to go all the way across because we have 2 next to each other. We just keep going, going, going. And then in our columns going down, we're going to, we have one whole, that's 10, plus 5. So that's 1.5 tenths. It's like 15 tenths. And our overlap is right here. So let's see mathematically how we figure that out. 1.5 times 0.5 using the algorithm. So if you were to count all those little guys there, you're going to wind up with 0.75. And that's how we use, well, do a little bit more. Don't worry, don't get nervous. But that's how we use a model to show decimal multiplication. It really does work. So it's just showing that you have an understanding of our value. Now, taking a look at, and I know when we play first in math, we have to place the decimal in some of the games. Kids have a hard time with that. But think of what we're doing here. We have 1.5, but we only have it 0.5. And remember we've talked before, 0.5 is the same as 1/2. So if you have 1.5 and you want to find out half of that, what's half of 1.5? You know your answer is going to be less than, your answer will be less than 1.5 because we're taking a half of 1.5. We're taking 1.5 and cutting it in half, we wind up with 0.75. So the area of the longer shelf is 0.75 square meters. If you counted up all those little blocks, you'd have 75 of them in the picture there. So if you're still unclear on that, you can watch the video that comes with the math program. Use the hundredths grid to model 0.7 and times 0.6. So we pick a side. I'll pick 0.6 for my columns, and I'll point 0.7 for my rows. So I'm going to shade in 7/10. And I did that in my rows, and then I'm going to do 6/10 in my columns, and the overlap will be our answer. Always start in the upper left-hand corner so you have some organization to your work. So 0.7 times 0.6, solve a simpler problem. 7 times 6 is 42. You have 2 digits that are sitting in the decimal place value in the problem. You're going to have 2 digits in decimal place value in the answer. So your answer is going to be 0.42. So the numbers that you're working with in this lesson are very small, but it's important that you place the decimal in the right place. So as we move on into the guided practice, each square shown has a length of 1/10 unit. Write a multiplication equation to match the model. So if this is our model that we have here, think of what we have over here. We have 0.2, and how many tenths do we have across? Remember, because they're saying each square is 1/10. So if we go all the way across, it's, as you count them all the way across, it's 0.18, or 0.18, yeah. So how many little blocks do we have altogether? 0.18 times 0.2. Actually, it's not 0.18, it's 1 point. Yeah, sorry about that. It's 18 altogether, but it's 1.8. So it's 1 whole and then 8 tenths. There we go. That looks better. 1.8 times 0.2. 18 times 2 is 36. I have 2 digits in decimal place value in my problem, 2 in my answer. So I'm going to wind up with 36 hundredths. Number 2, explain why 2.7 is not a reasonable answer for 3 tenths times 9 tenths. Well, you know that 3 times 9 is 27, but we also know that there's 2 digits in decimal place value in the problem. So my answer needs to be 0.27. The product must be less than 1. So 3 tenths is less than 1, and 0.9 is less than 1. So there's no way you could have an answer that's the whole number 2. Something less than 1 times something less than 1 is going to be super tiny. So that's using some of your logical reasoning skills. So when you see the shapes in the problems, you can use them. If you don't have different colored pencils or pens, you can just use some hashtags. So if I say let's say I'll do 8 here. So I'm starting in the corner here. I'm counting over 8, drawing a line down. I'm going to shade all this in. And like I said, if you don't have color, just draw some lines in one direction. And then I'm going to start in the corner here. And I'm going to go down 7. Now I'm going to shade this way. I'll cross over in the other direction. The overlap is my answer. So my answer is 0.7 times 0.8. 7 times 8 is 56. I have 2 digits in decimal place value in the problem. There will be 2 in my answer. For the next guy, I have 1/10. So that's just one tiny little all the way across row. And 2, okay, here's 1. Oops. Yeah. 2.1. I have 1, 2, and then one little guy over here. So this one's kind of tricky. It's hard to see. So you've got a lot shaded in over here. The overlap is this tiny little row that stops right there. So let's see what we have here. 2.1 times 0.1, multiply it out. I've got 2 digits in decimal place value in the problem. I'm going to have 2 in the answer. So it's 21 hundredths is my answer for that one. Okay, now the guided practice had a lot of the models. And you're going to see as you move into your buddy work, or if you choose to do the book work on this page, and don't forget the problem solving on the next page if you're doing the book work. But when we move down a little bit, I just want to quick check. You're going to see there's only 4 problems that use the model, the grids. Oops. And then there's 8 problems that are just computation. So if we go down here we go. So you have 4 shading problems, and then you wind up with 8 problems where you're just multiplying. You don't have to do a grid. So, and you can do this stuff in your head, many of these in your head. Like 8 times 2 is 16. 2 digits are sitting in decimal place value in your factors, so you need 2 in your answer. So you can go through here and do all the ones that you can do in your head. For this guy here, 9 times 1 is 9, but I need 2 digits in decimal place value. So what I'm going to have to do is annex a 0 and put the decimal in front like that. And in this guy here, 2 times 15 is 30. And I have 2 digits in decimal place value. Trying to see if there's any other weird ones. Nope, they all look good. So you can go in and do your computation here. And don't forget, you do have problems. If you're doing the buddy work online, you will have the word problems are embedded in your buddy work here. If you're doing it in the book, don't forget to do your word problems. Don't forget your Common Core problems at the bottom. So good luck.